Justice League Chaos Creator, Rimuru times Justice League, by Yazoo_U. Chapter 5. Sudden Battle Against Invasion. Alright. Time to shine, Rimuru muttered to himself as he stepped off the bus and into the bustling metropolis. The city's skyline stretched high above him, a mix of towering glass buildings and neon signs flashing every color imaginable. With a brief glance around, he navigated through the crowded streets toward the studio, where he'd been invited to showcase his baking skills on a popular cooking show. He filled out the necessary paperwork, name, birthday, all the usual stuff. No need for anything unnecessary, just the basics. The atmosphere was electric, contestants milling about, all preparing for the big show later that night. As the clock ticked toward 9 o'clock, the contestants were ushered to their stations. Ingredients were set out, ready to be turned into something extraordinary. Rimuru felt a surge of excitement. This was it, his big chance to make a mark. But just as he was about to settle into the flow of things, the ground beneath him trembled. A low rumble. The lights flickered, and then, the walls shattered. Screams echoed through the studio as monstrous, demon-like creatures flew through the gaping holes in the building. Their grotesque wings beat the air, carrying them effortlessly above the panicked crowd. They swooped down and grabbed civilians, hauling them into the sky with terrifying speed. "Get down," someone shouted, pushing past Rimuru in a mad scramble for safety. Rimuru froze, his eyes widening as he watched the chaos unfold. What are those? His mind raced, but he couldn't recall ever reading about such creatures. His knowledge of Earth's history was limited to a mere 200 years, but even that didn't explain these monsters. Were these cosmic entities? Or something else? But before his mind could wander further, his instincts kicked in. Acting without hesitation, Rimuru ripped off his apron and summoned a mask out of thin air. It wasn't just any mask. It was the one Shizu had left behind, a copy of it that he'd kept safe for occasions just like this. He quickly donned the mask, concealing his identity, and his clothes shifted as if by magic. No one would know he was one of the contestants on the show. The parademons, Rimuru recognized them now, thanks to CL's quick briefing, were carrying humans in their claws, lifting them higher and higher. It was time to act. With a swift motion, Rimuru bolted into action, weaving through the chaos and flying over the city. Screams filled the air as civilians scattered, some hiding, others rushing toward exits in blind panic. "Help!" a woman cried, clutching her child. A parademon swooped down, aiming for them. "No!" Rimuru roared, his eyes glowing with determination. He reached out, a powerful burst of energy pulsing through his body. He wasn't going to let anyone die within his field of vision. In an instant, he appeared in front of the woman and child, his hand outstretched, and with a single swipe, the parademon was torn apart, its body disintegrating into smoke. The woman stared at him, her eyes wide with shock and disbelief. "Are you?" she gasped, but before she could finish, Rimuru was already moving again. He didn't have time to stop and explain. He dashed through the streets, saving one civilian after another, teleporting between locations with ease, all while weaving barriers of light to shield them from the onslaught of flying monsters. "Please, someone help us," a man screamed, his voice cracking with panic as a parademon grabbed his wife and lifted her off the ground. Rimuru was already there. A flick of his wrist and the parademon was blasted into the side of a building, where it crumpled to the ground, lifeless. "You're safe now," he said gently, his voice barely audible over the screams of others. Civilians huddled together in the temporary shelters Rimuru conjured up, makeshift domes of energy that kept the creatures at bay. It wasn't much, but it was enough to protect them. For now, not even plasma weapons or nuclear power can penetrate it, so it was basically the strongest and safest places in this war zone for now. "What the hell is going on?" someone shouted, eyes wide in disbelief. "What are these things?" "Just run," Rimuru told him, his voice grim as he looked toward the sky, watching more of the winged monsters swoop down in search of more victims. "They'll take everyone if we don't stop them." More parademons dove, but Rimuru wasn't having it. His movements were a blur as he slaughtered the creatures one by one, each strike precise and lethal. His mask concealed his identity, but there was no mistaking the skill and power that radiated from him. People screamed as they scattered, but Rimuru kept his focus. The monsters were relentless, but Rimuru was faster and stronger. And as he eliminated the last of the parademons and looked around at the trembling civilians. This is taking too long. Skill activated. Thought acceleration. Then he began moving at light speed, instantly eliminating every threat on sight while saving civilians. It's like Flash was in the sky doing his job. He was thinking of using Megiddo. But the situation wasn't that dire anyway. And he's not in rush. By now 3 seconds had passed and he has already saved 1,000 and killed 100,000. More than the Flash could do in a short time. In less than 30 seconds, a huge portion of Metropolis was saved from any parademons. Chapter 6. Heroes unite. Get those civilians to the evacuation point now. A sergeant barked into his radio as the helicopter's rotors thundered overhead. We don't have time for second guesses. Soldiers scrambled through the war-torn streets, their rifles aimed at the sky as parademons swooped low, claws reaching for anything they could snatch. A squadron took position behind a crumbling bus stop, unloading a barrage of bullets into the swarm. Sergeant, targets inbound from the east, a young private called out, his voice tight with fear. Copy that. Alpha team, lay down suppressive fire. Bravo, stay on evac. The sergeant ordered, signaling with quick, precise hand movements. A family of 4 huddled near a collapsed building, the father shielding his children as debris rained down around them. One of the soldiers broke formation, rushing towards them. Ma'am, sir, move now, he shouted, grabbing the mother's arm to pull her to safety. But the kids? The ground shook as a chunk of the building began to crumble, tilting ominously toward them. Move! The soldier shouted again, his voice drowned by the deafening roar of collapsing concrete. Suddenly, a streak of blue and black zipped through the chaos. In the blink of an eye, the family was gone, reappearing in the safety zone across the street. What the hell just happened? The sergeant, his eyes scanning the area. Sir, civilians are safe. One of his men reported, tinged with confusion, pointing to the distant evac point. The sergeant stared for a moment, bewildered, before snapping back to reality. Good. Keep your heads on straight, people. We've got vigilantes fighting up there, but this is still our city. Let's clean it up. Lantern, you seeing this? Flash said, dodging a parademon's claws before tripping it with a well-placed kick. Green Lantern hovered above him, creating a glowing barrier to block another incoming wave. Oh, I see it. And I don't like it. What's the count now, Flash? I stopped counting after, like, 1,000, Flash replied, skidding to a halt beside him. Not exactly a record breaker for me, but still. Hey, remind me to tell you about this bakery I went to a while back. Best cinnamon rolls I've ever had. Now? Lantern snaps, forming a massive fist with his ring and smashing through a cluster of parademons. Just saying, you should check it out later. Focus, Barry. Fine, but seriously, I'll text you the address later. On the battlefield, Superman was a blur of red and blue, each strike a calculated blow that sent parademons flying. Heat vision lanced through the sky, clipping wings and grounding the invaders. You fight with honor, Wonder Woman called, her voice cutting through the chaos as she cleaved another parademon in two with her sword. But do not overreach. These creatures lack mercy. Good thing I don't need it, Superman replied, catching a parademon by the throat and hurling it into a nearby building. Wonder Woman raised her shield, deflecting an incoming attack before spinning her lasso. It snared 3 parademons in one sweep, yanking them to the ground where her sword finished the job. You're as strong as they say, alien, she said, her tone both commanding and curious. Thanks, I think, Superman said, eyeing her warily as they fought back to back. Further away, Batman skulked in the shadows, launching batarangs to disable the wings of any parademons straying too far from the main fight. His tactics were precise and brutal, but his frustration was clear. What the hell are these? He grappled to a higher perch, assessing the battlefield. Spotting a downed soldier fending off a lone parademon, Batman launched into action. He landed behind the creature, planting an explosive charge on its back before yanking the soldier to safety. Stay out of their range, he ordered coldly. Your guns won't do much. Who are you? Doesn't matter. Keep moving. Back in the air, Wonder Woman joined Flash and Green Lantern, her gaze sharp and calculating. "Warriors, your efforts are commendable, but scattered. This will not do," she said, pointing her sword toward the densest cluster of parademons. "Great, another strategist," Hal muttered, reinforcing his shield as another wave attacked. Flash sipped to her side, grinning. "She's got a point, though. So what's the plan, lady?" "Follow my lead," Wonder Woman said, her tone brooking no argument. She soared toward the center of the chaos, her movements graceful yet deadly as she cleared a path with her shield and sword. "Guess we're following her lead," Flash said, dashing after her. "Terrific," Hal muttered, shaking his head as he conjured a giant green hammer to cover their advance. As the battle raged on, the heroes worked in reluctant tandem, their combined efforts slowly but surely thinning the parademon swarm. Superman and Wonder Woman held the front line, their raw power carving through the horde. Flash darted between enemy ranks, creating distractions and openings for his allies, while Green Lantern's constructs provided much-needed support. Batman, ever the lone wolf, continued to operate from the shadows, ensuring that no stragglers escaped the battlefield. Despite their lack of coordination, their individual strengths began to turn the tide. "Perhaps we are not so different after all," Wonder Woman said, glancing at Superman as she sliced through another parademon. Superman didn't reply, his focus on the fight. But for the first time since the battle began, he allowed himself a small smile.